Madam Chair, members of the Commission, we're now live. Good evening and welcome to the the June 25th, 2025 meeting of the Montgomery County Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Karen Burdett and I am the chair. I will now ask the commissioners and staff to introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Mark Dominiani.
Jeffrey Haynes.
Julie Pelletier.
Michael Galway.
This is Commissioner Doman.
Devin Martha, Historic Preservation Staff.
Dan Bruckert, Historic Preservation Staff.
Laura DePasquale, Historic Preservation Staff.
Rebecca Ballo, Historic Preservation Staff. Thank you. The first item on our agenda this evening are the historic area work permits. Have the work permits been duly advertised? Yes, Madam Chair. They were advertised in the June 11th edition of the Washington Times. Thank you. If anyone is here to testify for any of the cases, please give a speaker form to the staff, and they will let us know that you are here to address one of the cases. We are going to begin by expediting the cases we believe can be expedited based on the staff reports. Okay. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to case 1A at 11650 Snowden Farm Parkway, Germantown? Case 1B at 8003 Overhill Road, Bethesda. Case 1C at 7500 Maple Avenue, Tacoma Park. Case 1E at 7112 Poplar Avenue, Tacoma Park. Case 1F at 2500 Holman Avenue, Silver Spring. And 1G at 10923 Montrose Avenue, Garrett Park.
Madam Chair, hearing no objections, I move that we approve the following historic area work permits in accordance with staff reports based upon the record before us in consideration of the recommendation of the local advisory panels and including the conditions recommended by staff. HOP number 1118730 at 11650 Snowden Farm Parkway, Germantown. HOP number 1118844 at 8003 Overhill Road, Bethesda. HOP number 1119049 at 7500 Maple Avenue, Tacoma Park. HOP number 1119086 at 7112 Poplar Avenue, Tacoma Park. HOP number 1097561 at 2500 Holman Avenue, Silver Spring. And HOP number 1117964 at 10923 Montrose Avenue, Garrett Park.
Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Galway, I second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays or abstentions? If not, these cases are approved. The HOPs are approved, and we thank you for preparing HOPs that are easily approvable. We will now move on to the HOPs that we will be hearing tonight. The first one is item 1D at 1811 Brighton Dam Road, Brookville. Is there a staff report? Yes, Madam Chair, there is a staff report. Rebecca Ballo for the record. This is the retroactive historic area work permit 1119197 at 1811 Brighton Dam Road in Brookville. A little bit of background. This is the Prospect Hill Master Plan historic site. The residence, the main dwelling, dates to circa 1783. The site includes the historic Holland Family Cemetery, and the entire property is delineated on the map on the right side of the slide in red, the dark red outline. However, the boundary of the master plan historic site, the environmental setting, is considerably smaller than the entire property, and that is shown here in pink. So there have been a number of work permits and items at this property in the recent past. Just to refresh the commissioners, the HPC approved a new 2-story addition to the main house in 2015. In 2022, you approved the construction of a 3-story garage. The HPC heard a preliminary consultation last summer, July of 2024, to review several unpermitted alterations and new construction items at the property. This past spring, in April of 2025, the HPC retroactively approved the construction of a log cabin with retroactive HOP 1107314. We are here tonight to hear a HOP for the approval of additional retroactive items. The standards of review are the Montgomery County Code, Chapter 24A, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. Again, going into a little bit more detail in the project background, starting with your preliminary consultation from last summer. At that time, the staff identified and the HPC affirmed that there were unpermitted violations of the property related to the following: installation of fencing, grading and site alterations, 12 newly constructed structures, and alterations to 2 existing structures. The applicant was given feedback at that time on which items could be supported by the HPC and which could not. The applicant was instructed to submit a HOP application for the unpermitted structures and other alterations. After several months of inactivity, DPS issued a notice of violation in December of 2024. The applicant appeared in district court on March 18th, 2025, and entered a guilty plea and agreed to a 30-day abatement order. The applicant received approval with one condition on April 23rd, 2025, for a retroactive approval of the construction of the log cabin. That took care of one of the items from the order. The subject application is for a retroactive approval for the construction of 7 accessory buildings and 2 stretches of fencing. This takes care of a number of the items that were noted in the abatement order that were discussed at the preliminary consultation, but not yet all of them. So this map shows all of the retroactive items that you reviewed in July of 2024. There's a lot of them here, so I'm not going to go through all of these, but they're detailed in your staff report. This evening, we are looking at fencing and 7 new structures. So the fencing is delineated here in red around the north rear yard of the house, here to the east, which encloses part of the livestock fields, and then 7 structures dotted around the environmental setting, and I will go through each of these briefly. At the preliminary consultation, the HPC gave the applicant several items that they needed to complete for their HOP application related to a number of the alterations. If you recall, when we heard the log cabin case, you all had conditions about archaeology, so that's been fulfilled. For these items, the HPC had directed the applicant to prepare a detailed scaled site plan for the designated portion of the property that showed the location of these accessory structures. That was included in your packet, and then specifications for the materials that were used to construct each of these new buildings. So the first item is a post and wire fence located at the rear north side of the property, delineating the yard. You can see, so it's keyed to the map. Here it is. It separates the backyard of the house from the utilitarian farmyard where the agricultural activities take place. The second fence is typical 3-board livestock fencing with a wire mesh. It separates their fields from a part of the road. You can see it's here along the map. So the fencing does continue on the rest of the property, but only this portion here is located within the environmental setting. So it's really only this portion of it, more or less, that you are being asked to retroactively approve this evening. One of the accessory buildings that was constructed was a windmill. It's located here in the northeast corner of the environmental setting, shown here. Another accessory building is a woodshed and sawmill. It is located to the north, to the rear of the hay barn, shown here. Another accessory building is the shearing shed. So not all of the shearing shed is within the boundary of the environmental setting. It's really just kind of this corner of it here, of this shed roof part of the structure that is within the environmental setting. But because of that, the entire structure does need to come in for your retroactive approval for the hop. There is a chicken coop that is located just to the rear of the previously approved log cabin. There are 2 chicken feeders called the Aviana 1 and 2 in the applicant's submission. They're located here in the field. There's the Aviana 1 and 2. And then a goat structure that is just next to the easternmost boundary of the environmental setting. So each of these structures are purpose-built for the care, feeding, and maintenance of the livestock that are on the property. And the windmill and the wood shed are related to cutting and sawmilling of lumber from the applicant's property, also related to agricultural activities on the site. There are several unaddressed issues. Some items remain unpermitted from the abatement order, including material storage, the construction of a construction trailer, the location of sea containers on the site, fuel tanks that were installed next to the corn crib, and then other grading and site alterations. I have some pictures just to give you an update. So this is the hay barn here that shows a number of materials still being stockpiled. This is a portion of the yard that used to be grass that is no longer. This is the area between the corn crib and the front of the hay barn, the south side of it. This is the back of the hay barn that shows, again, a water tank, a construction trailer. This debris was out there at the time of your preliminary consultation review last summer, and it was still there at the time of staff site visit this past spring. This is, again, the rear and side of the hay barn. This is one of the sea containers. There's these 2 trailers here, and there's these kinds of metal sheets along the top that have made these kind of garage bays for construction or other farm equipment. This also shows the deteriorated condition of the yard. This is just another view of the side of that construction trailer. This is the corn crib that shows the fuel tank above grade. If you all remember from the preliminary consultation review, the applicant had constructed a shed roof, like a little structure here, and then one on the other side. The HPC had instructed him to remove those and the fuel tank. He did remove the 2 structures, so that has come into compliance. The fuel tanks are still outstanding. And then this is the other side that also shows the fuel tank. These are new structures that have been placed in this location since your preliminary consultation. And this is a view of the back side of the corn crib, looking back towards the main house. That also shows some paved areas here and the alterations to the yard. Here's the log cabin that you approved this past spring and the construction trailer that remains unpermitted. So I'm happy to answer any questions about those items, but for the purpose of the hearing this evening and the hop that is in front of you, staff finds that per Chapter 24A 8B1, the buildings and fencing do not substantially alter the exterior features of the historic site. Per Chapter 24A 8B2, the simple design of these buildings and the fencing is compatible in character with the historical, architectural, and cultural features of the historic site, where small outbuildings in the farmyard and fields were common. Many of the buildings are constructed of wood, milled on the property, or of wood and metal where appropriate for the type of outbuildings. And staff finds that the buildings and fencing meet the applicable Secretary of the Interior standards 2, 9, and 10. They are compatible with the character of the property, and they can also be easily removed in the future without damaging or destroying any other historical cultural features on the site. So staff recommends that the HPC approve this retroactive hop for the fencing and the 7 accessory buildings, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for staff? If there are no questions for staff, then I invite the applicant to come forward, Jeffrey Shiraze. And please turn on the mic so it's green, and then identify yourself by name and your connection to this application for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Shirazi,
And you're
the
the
owner of the house,
Okay.
the property.
And you will have 7 minutes to say whatever you want about this application, or if not, we can ask you questions.
I can answer questions.
Okay, are there any questions for the applicant? If there are not, there are no questions. Oh, Commissioner Haynes has a question.
This is Commissioner Haynes. My question is, how are you planning to address the unpermitted items that were discussed in the presentation?
I'm dealing with my attorney right now, and we're figuring that out because I was approved to build the barn, and I brought the materials there to start, and then we had some problems with the other stuff, and they said stop. So that gravel is there for the building that I'm building, and I moved out of my house to move into the farm with nothing there, and I have to keep my materials in there, and that's my argument. And when I came here the first time, I said that, and everyone was okay with it. I said, when I'm done with the project, the seed containers are removed. That's normal practice. I do this for a living. I'm a contractor. So when I build the building, those things will be gone. And I don't understand why we're having such a problem with that, but I guess we're figuring that out. But it's a very normal practice that store materials and not leave it out in the weather. And that's my argument about that part. And my materials that are there are for the gravel for the building, and you need that to build the building. So everything will be pretty much satisfied when I'm done with the building.
Do you have a timeline for completing?
It'll take between 1 year to 2 years max to build everything. But in 5 years, I built the house. I cleaned up the entire property. I mean, not the entire, but a good amount of the property. It's been neglected for like 65 years, 85 years. So I'm pretty much doing a good job cleaning everything up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to have a sense of,
I don't want to live like that. The property is beautiful. And I do this, like I said, I do this for a living, and I'm going to make it beautiful like I have. And you could see with the house and all the things I've done. So I'm on the right track. I just need to, how should I say this nicely? Like, I need to be treated with some type of understanding that it's an ongoing project, and like I said, it's common practice to have these things to store your belongings. And then I've said before, all that stuff, everything will be gone once the project is done.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to hear that there is a strategy, there is a game
Absolutely.
plan
Absolutely.
to keeping things going forward.
Well,
So it's
also you could see everything around the house. When you drive up to the property, it's like I was working on all those areas, and as I'm done, everything gets into a smaller circle and it slowly goes away. So it's like there's actually like you can actually see the results as I clean up, as I do work. It looks good.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Commissioner Doman?
Yeah, this Commissioner Doman, again, this is a follow-up on previous question, but you're waiting to build something? Is that what I understand? You've got the gravel there, and you said, and you got your equipment in the C-vans. You're going to build another building, is that correct?
Yeah, you all approved the barn to be built.
Okay, and the reason you alluded to something that there's a problem in getting it started, or is there a regulatory issue on this? What seems to be the problem with getting started?
I can start. I just need. So I was stopped by your staff to stop building the barn. And I guess we're in the process of figuring that out. Because we would have probably been done by now, but I was stopped by your staff.
With the HPC staff, is that
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
Not by the Historic Preservation Office. There were issues with the Department of Permitting Services. Was a building permit required or not? Was this a garage? Was this an ag use? We were looking into a number of other issues, but my understanding is that we have cleared those issues with DPS based on the correspondence from the last couple of months. They needed the green light. You know, was this an ag use or not, or was this a vehicle garage? And my understanding through the applicant's representative is that that was cleared up. But we did not put a stop work order. Historic Preservation did not put a stop work order on the barn.
Thank you. Any other comments, sir?
No.
No? Okay. Then we're going to, if there are any comments now before we take a vote, I'd like a motion. And again, we are talking about the 7 structures that are listed on the drawing and the 2 stretches of fence, and that's all we're talking about. So can I have a motion, please?
Sure. This is Commissioner Haynes. I move that the Historic Preservation Commission approve HOP number 119197 at 1811 Brighton Dam Road, Brookville, based on the staff report for the 7 accessory structures and the 2 fence locations.
Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Pelletier, a second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any nays or abstentions? Then these structures and the fence are approved. The hops for these are approved. And I would like to, so please, you know, these hops are approved. You can talk with staff about where to go next. But I also noted from the staff's report that there are 2 new farm structures out there. So please bring a hop forward for those 2 as well.
What is that?
There, you have 2 new buildings, 2 new structures, farm structures? No?
No.
I believe, and this is something so the applicant is continuing to work with our office and with the Department of Permitting Services to come into compliance. I have spoken with him about, are these the ones you're talking about?
Yes, that's the ones.
We have spoken about these in the field. These are not currently the subject of the abatement order because these were put up after the initial notice of violation that DPS had issued in December. So these are a separate matter that we will continue to work with the applicant to come into compliance for these as well. Right now, we're trying to, we're working to clean up what we've got.
Yeah.
And to make sure that other things do not happen while we're working to come into compliance. But we are getting there.
Okay, so they will need a hop eventually.
If they are to remain in this location in the environmental setting, yes.
Okay,
But we haven't gotten to that point to address that yet with the applicant.
all things in good time. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank
And your hops are approved?
Thank you.
Your hop is approved, I guess, for all those items, so.
Thank you.
Our next case is number 1H at 10923 Montrose Avenue, Garrett Park. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there is. This is Devin Murtha for the record. This is Historic Area Work Permit number 1119860 for porch deck replacement at 10923 Montrose Avenue in Garrett Park. This is a retroactive application and the work occurred in 2012. The subject property is an outstanding resource in the Garrett Park Historic District. It is a 2.5-story Queen Anne style house with a 1-story wraparound porch, constructed in 1892. The project is subject to review under the comprehensive amendment to the North Bethesda Garrett Park Master Plan, which includes the designation and design guidelines for the Garrett Park Historic District, as well as Chapter 24A of the Montgomery County Code, the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, and Policy Number 24-01. Retroactive applications are to be reviewed as if the work has not already occurred. On May 29th, 2025, staff conducted a site visit to the subject property in service to a separate HOP application, HOP number 1117964 for window replacement on the rear addition of the house, was approved on the consent agenda earlier this meeting. While on site, staff noted that the front porch flooring was not wood, but a composite material with an embossed texture. Staff contacted the applicant, who confirmed that the wood porch flooring was replaced with AZIC brand composite flooring in 2012 without a historic area work permit. The applicant then submitted a retroactive HOP application in a timely manner for the Commission's consideration, including photos of the porch prior to the project. As shown in these photos from 2012, as well as the Google Street View image on the left, the front porch flooring was previously wood. Photos show that some of the boards were deteriorated and in poor condition. The applicant is seeking retroactive approval for the installation of the AZIC brand tongue and groove porch flooring shown in the photos. The new material was installed on both the porch and the stairs. The porch flooring is presently uncapped with an exposed edge. You can see here. Staff believes that the product is a PVC or composite flooring made by AZIC based on information provided by the applicant and markings with the manufacturer logo on the boards. The applicant was not able to provide specific information on the product line, but did submit general information about the AZIC decking boards. The AZIC company purchased TimberTech in 2012, the same year as the installation. AZIC now markets its porch products under the TimberTech name. Based on a visual analysis, the installed product appears to most closely resemble the current line of AZIC TimberTech PVC porch floors in slate gray on the left, with an embossed texture. Alternatively, the product may be an AZIC porch flooring made of PVC and agrofiber composite. These products generally have a 30 to 50-year warranty. The HPC has reviewed several cases involving the replacement of wood porches with PVC and composite materials in the past few years. In 2023, the HPC denied an application for retroactive approval to install TimberTech on the front porch of 3927 Prospect Street in Kensington. The HPC found that wood was the only appropriate replacement material for a porch on a primary resource. The photo on the right is of the installed TimberTech, which was removed and replaced with wood following the HPC meeting. At the June 11th, 2025 HPC meeting, the Commission denied an application to install TimberTech at 10300 Fawcett Street, Kensington, again affirming that the only appropriate material for the front porch on a primary resource is wood. Staff notes that the designation category of primary in Kensington is comparable to the category of outstanding in Garrett Park. Staff notes that HPC decisions do not establish precedent, but serve to inform the Commission's judgment. However, the HPC must avoid acting in an arbitrary manner in its judgment of factually similar cases to preserve the credibility of HPC policies and to provide clear and consistent guidance to applicants. The comprehensive amendment to the North Bethesda Garrett Park Master Plan does not specifically call out any character-defining features. However, the plan does state that outstanding resources must have special features, architectural details, and/or historical associations that make the resource representative of an architectural style. Special features of the Queen Anne style include a one-story wraparound porch and decorative turn posts. Staff finds that the front porch of the house is likely original and a character-defining feature that contributes significantly to the resource and to the district as a whole. Standard 6 dictates that deteriorated features may be replaced with new features that match the old in design, color, texture, and where possible, materials. The applicant submitted compelling photographic documentation that the porch flooring was in need of replacement. However, staff finds that the installed flooring does not meet Standard 6. The embossed texture does not successfully mimic the texture of painted wood. Additionally, many wood species are readily available for in-kind replacements. An in-kind replacement with wood would also qualify for the county's tax credit. In order to provide more specific guidance on the issue of porch flooring's replacement materials, in 2024, the HPC adopted policy number 24-01 for the appropriateness of substitute materials for porch and deck flooring. The policy states that porch floors on outstanding resources must be painted wood installed in a historically appropriate manner, meaning tongue and groove 2 to 3 inches in width and installed perpendicular to the facade. The policy states that some non-wood replacement flooring may be considered on a case-by-case basis on non-historic additions or new construction to outstanding resources. Staff finds that under this policy, AZEK TimberTech decking products do not qualify as appropriate porch flooring materials for the resource. These products cannot be painted without voiding the warranty and are not millable. Staff was able to easily identify the product as non-wood material during the site visit. In particular, the manufactured appearance of unfinished PVC board edges stood out from a distance. Evaluating the proposal under Chapter 24A of the County Code, staff finds the installation of this particular AZEK brand PVC or composite porch flooring to be inappropriate and recommends the HPC deny this HOP under 24A 8A. Staff finds that the proposed porch replacement will substantially alter the exterior features of a historic resource, contra 24A 8B1. Staff additionally finds the proposed material is not a compatible substitute for wood decking, contra 24A 8B2. Staff does not find the proposed work will provide additional protection for the site per 24A 8B3, nor that the existing condition is unsafe or a health hazard as generally understood per 24 8B4, nor that the property owners will be deprived of reasonable use or suffer undue hardship of their property per 24 8B5 if the HOP is not approved. Staff finds that in applying a balancing act, the public is not better served by granting the permit per 24 8B6. For these reasons, staff finds the HPC should deny the proposed porch replacement as outlined in Chapter 24A 8A. Staff finds that although the proposed flooring is not appropriate, the installation meets some of the criteria laid out in Policy 24-01, namely that it was installed perpendicular to the house and cut at an appropriate angle at the corner. However, the existing flooring is not painted, contra Policy 24-01, and the boards were installed without a finished edge. Should the HPC consider mitigation in this proposal, the installation of an edge board running parallel to the house could conceal the unfinished edge. Staff recommends the HPC deny the retroactive installation of the porch floor replacement under Chapter 24A 8A, having found the proposal is inappropriate, inconsistent with, and detrimental to the preservation, enhancement, and ultimate protection of the historic resource, and is incompatible in character with the historic resource and the purposes of Chapter 24A, and the comprehensive amendment to the North Bethesda Garrett Park Master Plan, and with the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation. After hearing from the applicant, considering the written testimony of the Garrett Park LAP, and deliberating, the HPC may come to a different conclusion than staff. The HPC has, in limited circumstances, allowed an applicant to retain non-compatible substitute materials with the understanding that they cannot be replaced in the future. Earlier this year, the HPC allowed the applicant at 5 Philadelphia Avenue in the Tacoma Park Historic District to retain some of the vinyl windows on the secondary elevation of their house. These windows had been installed without a HOP a decade prior. The applicant proposed to replace the vinyl windows with appropriate wood windows on the facade immediately and install wood window replacements on the secondary elevations when the vinyl windows failed in the future. In that instance, the commission factored in the hierarchy of elevations as well as the advanced and limited lifespan of the vinyl windows in the decision to allow for a phased replacement of the architectural feature over time. Staff can find no such instances of a decision for an incompatible porch floor replacement and notes that the lifespan of PVC and composite flooring generally exceeds that of vinyl windows. Staff finds that the age of installation may be relevant in retroactive cases if the product has limited remaining years of service. Staff does not wish to suggest that the HPC should approve inappropriate materials based purely on age. Should the HPC find cause to approve this permit, staff proposes 2 conditions for mitigation to lessen the proposal's visual impact on the district. The first condition is that the porch flooring is replaced with wood within a specific time frame or when the current product fails, whichever occurs first. The second condition is that the applicant conceal the exposed edges of the timber deck to remain with a board installed parallel to the facade. That concludes the staff presentation, and I would be happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions for staff? I have a question. I need clarity on our 2 options here. Or is it one option? We can deny the retroactive hop, but we can allow the existing porch flooring to remain as long as it is replaced with wood in the future?
You can deny the hop, or you can disagree with staff's recommendation and approve the hop with conditions that you set. I put forward 2 conditions you might want to consider if you find a cause to approve this permit, but it's staff's recommendation to deny it.
But can we deny the hop but then not take action? No, we have to either approve it or deny it.
Your denial would be an action. So you can deny, you can approve with conditions, or if you find that you need more information for some reason, you may defer to collect more information that would help your deliberation. But we do need a decision.
Or the other, okay. All right, any other questions for staff? Commissioner Doman?
So if we go along with staff recommendation and deny, that means the applicant needs to physically remove it within a reasonable time frame, regardless of condition, and install wood. That is the option, right? That's what's being recommended by staff.
Yes, it's my understanding that the inappropriate material would need to be removed and replaced with an appropriate material.
Is there a time frame for that?
You could decide on a time frame for it. Basically what happens, if you deny the historic area work permit, then they are out of compliance with 24A. So then that would trigger a notice to the Department of Permitting Services for a citation and notice of violation. Those notices are cleared by the applicant either getting the historic area work permit, which you will have denied, or abating the work, so going back to a wood porch flooring. And the time frame for that, working through DPS, as you can see with the previous application, it can take a while to move through the system. The HPC, with your approval of the retroactive hop for the log cabin, for example, you approved that with a condition that an archaeological study had to be done within a certain amount of time, 6 months. You can condition, so if you were even to condition the approval, with the mitigation noted by staff that a trim board would have to be installed, you could give a time frame for that. You could also give a time frame in your denial. And that the time frame you would give in your denial would help kind of guide us with the Department of Permitting Services, but there's nothing necessarily binding on that. Like you could say for the denial, you would want to see them come into compliance within, I'm going to make this up, like 6 months. And if they do not, at that time, direct staff to pursue enforcement with DPS. There are a lot of options, is sort of what I'm trying to say.
This is Chair Burdett. Was there ever consideration for a partial removal of the material and replacement with wood?
We really didn't consider that, mostly because once you start to take up the decking, it really is kind of infeasible. I see Commissioner Doman sort of shaking his head about that. Once you get started, you really should keep going, and we understand the difficulty of kind of a partially completed porch flooring. It didn't seem feasible for this type of architectural feature or for the materials that we had in question. So no, frankly, we didn't consider that as an option.
And has the applicant been appraised of the materials that we would now approve or consider appropriate or acceptable materials?
I believe I advised the applicant that the appropriate material was wood in the staff recommendation, but she can testify to that. She's here today.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Pelletier?
Thanks. I'm just curious I'm looking at the photo of the front of the house. What is that first riser up to the porch made of on the right there?
Would that be a question for the applicant?
Well, maybe, but I thought maybe the staff would know.
I think it's wood, but that may be a question for the applicant.
Okay. It's just hard to tell from the photo.
All right. If there are no more questions, then I invite the applicant, Barbara Collier, to come forward. And if you'll have a seat and turn on the mic so the light is green, the mic is on.
It seems to be green.
Yeah.
Yes.
And give your name and your relationship to this application or project. Thank you.
I'm Barbara Collier, and I'm one of the owners of the house, and we submitted the application.
Thank you. And you have 7 minutes to give a history or your understanding, anything you want, and then we'll ask you questions afterwards. And I'd ask you pull the mic a little closer to you.
How's that?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I guess the history is fairly, well, maybe it's not obvious to you. It's obvious to us because when we were doing a lot of repairs to our house back in 2012, there was a lot of stuff to be done on the porch. And when they got to the flooring, they said, this is all bad, this wood. You're going to have to replace the whole thing. So what have you considered the advantages? And we said, oh, okay. And didn't realize till later that that was the wrong decision, even though I do recall a time thinking, not having to buy porch gray paint anymore. How weird is that, But anyway, so then when we realized, we thought, oh, well, oops. But then, of course, with our window request, this all came up again. So I guess our position is we'll do what has to be done, but we would really prefer, obviously, to be told, oh, for now, just keep it and do whatever other things that, you recommend. Because obviously, when this stuff fails, putting wood back would be perfectly fine as far as we're concerned, although people tell us that the wood nowadays isn't what it used to be, and we'll have have to get into all that business of what's the kind of wood and can you do it and all that. But that's just the normal practical problems that would come up. So we're basically here to beg for mercy. I guess I'd put it like that.
Have you, this is Chair Burdett, have you investigated replacing this current material with wood and considering there are tax credits involved?
Yeah, we now know about the tax credits. We didn't back then. Had we known, we probably would have found all this out much earlier. But yeah, we've done tax credits in the last couple of years for things like our roof, but haven't really investigated in detail. I did see some stuff about, well, you can get extraordinarily expensive tropical hardwood, and I thought, oh, but then all the people who get it seem to say, oh, and then you should just let it weather because it will turn a beautiful gray, and I thought, I'm not sure that would come up to the standards that you're looking for here. But, we have not really looked into it because we figured we'd just wait and see.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Pelletier?
Just want to ask my question. What is that first step made of? Or is it just the light that's making it look yellow?
Yellow? What are you talking about?
The first step, the lower step going up to your front
It's
porch.
red.
No, not that one, on the right. On the right, that first step. Yeah. Is that-
Oh, actually, I thought, do you know, I thought it was wood. Or is it? You think it is?
Would you mind saying that into the mic? I'm sorry, we just need to capture it for the record. Are you-
I don't, are you talking about, oh, that one,
That one, yeah.
the riser?
The riser, yeah.
I don't remember looking at it.
But is it the photo that's making it look like it's a different color than the rest of the porch?
It's got shadow on it, but I think it's the same stuff. Yeah.
It's the same wood as the porch flooring.
Oh,
It's-
that might make sense, because
Yeah.
it's lighter than the rest of the brown, like the face of, like the second riser is brown, which I can see from the photo on the
Yeah,
left,
right.
but the first riser, that's the same stuff?
Yeah, I
that we're
think
talking
so.
about.
I
Okay.
think so.
Okay, well, that would
With
make
our,
sense.
we have a second set of stairs on the back, the other part of the porch, and those are still wood, right? And I just don't remember looking at the risers particularly, so I don't know.
Okay, all right, well, if
Commissioner Doman?
Yeah, you said that this was installed in 2012, correct? Have you had any problems with it? We know that if it's wood, you have a maintenance issue and you have to paint it. You
Right.
refer to the gray paint being put on it. This is now a synthetic product. How is it held up for you? How do you feel about this product?
We're fine with it, but then we're not terribly fussy. So, I mean, I thought, oh, so they don't like the pretend the faux wood grain. Oh, well. You know, I mean, we thought, oh, well, it looks sort of like wood. So that shows our standards. But anyway, no, we don't have any complaints about it. It's been fine.
You haven't had any decay, so it's, what, 13 years, something like that, it's been on there?
No, it's pretty much the same as it's been. I mean, it's dirtier, I expect.
Yeah, do you hose it down, wash it, something like that once in a while?
I suppose we should, shouldn't we?
I'm not picking on you.
I can't say. I think we mostly just sweep it.
Okay, and a lot of decks, if they're wood decks, if you have flower pots and heavy things sitting on a wood deck for a long time, moisture accumulates underneath, you know,
Right,
and it's
yeah.
a problem with wood decks that you have to move all of the items off, clean your deck, and then paint it.
Right.
I don't see if you have heavy things, but I see furniture on your deck and stuff like that, but apparently you don't have to move anything. You're happy with the way it is and works
Not
out fine for
really.
you.
And we have enough places to put pots on the ground that I don't think we've ever used our porch for pots. And I mean, it's shady, so we used to sometimes try hanging baskets, but that's a lot of trouble.
No, but the picture in the middle that's currently on the screen in front of it, I mean, it looks very nice. I can see how the diagonals have been set in for the corner, and it looks like it was professionally installed, and looks like it was well done.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, they did a good job, I thought. But yeah, as I say, we just wanted to get the porch replaced. So,
Are there any other questions for the applicant? All right, well, I would like some opinions. And Commissioner Dominiani, I'd like to start with you, just because you're at the end there, so please.
Yeah, on this one, I am a bit torn because the applicant had installed this porch quite a long time ago, and I understand there's testimony here from the Garrett Park LAP as well, which is recommending essentially that we approve the hop with the condition that at such time that it's time to replace this material, that we go ahead and install wood. But understanding that that's tricky, considering I know we don't set precedent, but in previous cases with houses that are at this sort of the level of at this level of resource we've rejected. I was wondering the feasibility, I'm not a carpenter, but to add a piece of trim board along the edge, for example, to disguise that edge of the timber tech material, it seemed like that could be a possible condition to make it look a bit less like an alternate material. I don't know how easily that is to install, or can you attach a piece of wood trim board along? So I'm wondering if there's maybe a condition like that we could set to maybe disguise this a bit, as well as having a condition that we could replace it with wood sometime in the future. Understanding again that it will be very expensive to rip it off and put something else new on. Yeah.
Commissioner Haynes?
Well, these cases always bring lots of consternation. As an architect, I get the maintenance issue associated with wood flooring, but we are the Historic Preservation Commission. You have an outstanding resource, and we want demand maintaining the quality of the architecture if it wasn't an outstanding resource. And when you start to use substitute materials, it chips away at the, I feel, chips away at the quality of the resource architecturally. It's kind of like, I don't know, a fake leather jacket. It's not real leather, but it kind of looks it from a distance. But so preserving authenticity of materials on an outstanding resource is important for the preservation of the resource. So I'm conflicted, but I probably fall on the side of doing wood flooring versus the composite.
Commissioner Pelletier?
It's clearly a violation of the rules. It's kind of hard, like Commissioner Haynes was saying, you have an outstanding resource. It's kind of hard to argue to keep the flooring. One thing I would say, and this may be completely out of context, but is that asbestos shingles on your house?
Yes.
Okay, so in light of that, because it's an outstanding resource, I don't know what's under those shingles, but I do think because there are asbestos shingles, I could be convinced to maybe just go with the trim board. I mean, because some of the exterior has been compromised already. I know, hopefully you could probably take all that off and there'd be some surviving cupboard underneath it, but I don't know. I'm rather conflicted about this, but I could be persuaded if others were on board to compromise and add the trim board on the edges and say in 10 years you've got to replace this with wood. But it's hard to justify it a little bit because of I didn't say it was going to disintegrate in 10 years. I just said it needs to be replaced in 10 years. It'll probably look brand new in 10 years. But that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like the resource itself has had some unfortunate cladding issues already. But the rules do say it's an outstanding resource, and we do not allow alternative materials on an outstanding resource. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't quite know which way to go, but I could be persuaded to do the trim board.
Commissioner Galway?
This is Commissioner Galway. I pretty much agree with the other commissioners in that what's there now is not appropriate. I think where I would probably fall on this is I would recommend leniency on the amount of time that you have to replace it. So rather than say within an acceptable time frame being 6 months or a year, I think maybe it's a 10-year process. So that way I'm not I can sleep at night saying come down on saying it has to be replaced, but give you some latitude in how long we would allow you to go to do that. And that would help probably from your perspective as well in planning for that. So that's where I would fall. I would agree that the end cap, it would be a nice way to cover up the end grain of the PVC. And I think the one question I've actually applied that myself in porches, and it wasn't that difficult to attach. So I think you could put a milled wood piece on the edge and attach it to the edge of the PVC without any issue. So that's my comments.
Commissioner Doman?
We're going down the line, is that? Okay, all right. Probably most people know I'm kind of a proponent of moving with technology, and I believe we have better products out there than the wood. And I'm looking at, I guess it's, I don't know what page it is, 289 of the 328, which shows a deck with a bunch of deteriorated boards, and then it shows the end grain of your porch on it. I don't find the end of the boards as being unusual. I mean, you could take a brand new piece of pine or any other kind of wood and cut it. You're going to end up with something that looks like, you can see the tongue and groove in there. And I don't see a need for the cap. However, if the cap is the thing that pushes us over and allows you to keep the deck as is, the cap is fine. My experience has been, being that I've done a lot of carpentry work, is that the cap that goes on there comes forward a little bit of the end of your boards, okay? And when you tend to walk up the stairs, your weight is on the very edge of the step, and the cap tends to roll under a little bit, and/or eventually the nails will pull back and separate. I'm not a big fan of putting any kind of cap on it whatsoever, to tell you the truth. However, if that's what it's going to allow you to keep your deck as is, then I think I can go with it. I wouldn't even put wood. I mean, I would make it out of synthetic material, which can be milled, but that's a different story. I would not, I mean, if you use a pine, it's going to fall apart in a couple years. If you use a mahogany, it's less expensive. You got to, I don't know, you even want to paint it. I mean, I don't know what I would use for a cap, to tell you the truth. And I've done a lot of carpentry work. I'm familiar with all the different wood species, and I would be hard-pressed to make a recommendation to you. And I'm looking at these pictures. You look at the one in figure number 4, it shows, and this is what you get with end grain of wood. It's all deteriorated, and it just looks bad. The one in picture number 5, which shows the new composite flooring on there, it's nice and square, and it's all together, and it's held up. I mean, these products are like between 30 to 50 years life expectancy. I mean, I could see this thing lasting a long time, and I'm all in favor of approving, and even though the staff recommends denial, I would recommend approving it, to leave it as is, and if we need to put a cap on it to appease everybody, then we can put a cap on it. But I wouldn't even bother doing that. I think we should leave it alone. I think it's just an awful, a big expense to try and tear all that up right now and to replace it. I don't think it's justified to have to remove all this wood. It creates scrap that ends up in a landfill someplace. I just don't see any reason why you'd want to pull all this stuff out and replace it with wood that might only last 7 years. And that requires maintenance every 2 years to clean it and paint it. You know, I think you have a good floor. I think it's appropriate. The visibility of that little edge, tongue, and groove from the right-of-way, I think, is minimal. I think there's, I mean, to me, it may not be wood, but I think it sure looks good. I think it looks very good. So I support the alternative that was put forth by the staff, that we allow it to stay on until it deteriorates, and if we want to put a cap on it, you put a cap on it. And that's how I feel about it. Thank you.
Commissioner Pelletier has a question.
I mean, I'm asking, this is for Commissioner Doman. Aren't there PVC caps? I mean, doesn't TimberTech make an end cap for this?
Yeah, I believe they do.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
so it doesn't, I mean, I don't think it has to be wood, but you could use a like material. That was my only question.
My point, it was still that when people walk on steps, the weight is at the very
Right.
edge of the step.
I hear you.
And
I
it
hear
pulls
you.
it away and pulls it off, you know.
Okay, thank you, both. So I'll go last as far as my opinion, and then I think I'm going to have a question for staff. But this one's a tough one. It really is. And right after this, we are going to discuss our policy about wood replacement on porch floors, of which we spent many, many meetings last year discussing and debating it, just like what you just heard. And we developed a policy that basically there are some wood substitute materials that we will consider. They're wood. They are wood substitutes, but they are wood. And that the PVC, the AZAC, is not appropriate because it's mostly plastic. Even the branch of it that has wood and plastic, it's still mostly plastic. But this is tough because this has been here a long time. Your porch has been there a long time, and unfortunately, the TimberTech can last 30 years before it starts even showing any age, and it's only 13 years into that 30 years. But we are the HPC, and we are tasked with preserving the historic resources in the county and their conditions and their appearance. And we don't set precedents with every case, but you can believe me that anything we've done in the past is brought back to us every time anybody wants to do something we don't approve of. And each commission changes over the years in what they approve and what they don't. But it's, as Commissioner Haynes says, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts with historic properties, is that it's one piece and then the next and then the next, and before you know it, it's lost its significance or its historic status. And just as now, you'd not be allowed to put asphalt shingles on that house, but those were put on long, long before the HPC was even around. If you had come to the commission, the HPC, 12 years ago, you would not have been allowed. Right. And if we had the option of saying, we're going to deny you this retroactive, but you can keep your porch floor, we would do that, but that apparently isn't one of our options. No, she's shaking her head. My opinion, and this is where the question to the staff comes in, is I think we should defer this case so the applicant has a chance to read our policy and to do some research on these substitute materials for pricing purposes, to figure out how much it would cost you, with taking into account the tax credits, and then we can come back, you could come back and we can talk about it and make our decision then. Is that, staff, is that a reasonable?
Excuse me. It's certainly up to the discretion of the commission whether or not the applicant agrees with your determination is not relevant in terms of the findings that you need to make to support your ultimate decision. But I mean, I understand this is a difficult case. This was a difficult one for us to bring and to work through, and these circumstances are really unfortunate. I will make a note, since I have the mic, to talk about the conditions, because there's just been a number of options proposed. when it comes to conditioning any type of permit, there has to be what's called a rational nexus for your condition. It has to be proportional. So you couldn't, for example, make a condition that she has to, replace the porch flooring with the highest grade, like most expensive lumber, and restore the, and rip off the asbestos shingle siding and restore all these other aspects of the house. So there has to be a nexus between what you're asking the condition for to mitigate, what it is that you're approving. It also has to be enforceable. Okay? When you are subjecting an applicant to the condition, you're also subjecting the staff to enforcing that condition. So in terms of something that we could reasonably ascertain in the field, if something complies or not, or giving us and the applicant a reasonable time frame to comply. That's why I really do understand and sympathize with the gesture for giving a long time frame, but I don't think that 10 years is enforceable. For the case at Prospect Street in Kensington, 3927 Prospect, where the applicant had installed that porch flooring retroactively that was then denied, we picked that up as part of a tax credit case because he'd applied for a tax credit for it. It ultimately took, I think, about a year for him to do the research and to do the work and then to replace the porch flooring. So we didn't move very far down the line with any kind of enforcement action because he was showing that he was going to come into compliance, and he kept up the lines of communication with staff. So I just say keep those things in mind. There has to be a rational nexus, it has to be proportional, and it has to be enforceable. Now, if the commission would just like to give the applicant more time to research her options, that's perfectly within your purview to do so. I would ask that you say we will come back on a date certain to discuss it again, but then also remind you that no matter whether she agrees with it or not, that can't be the basis of any of your findings, because what you would need to do in order to approve the permit is find that it meets the criteria in 24A 8B.
And it by its nature does not.
Can you go to that?
Well, I mean, this flooring does not meet the criteria, flat out.
Staff finds that it does not.
Yeah. So we can't approve it because it doesn't meet the criteria.
You would have to make a finding based on, facts, findings, and conclusions. So with the given set of facts, staff made the finding that it does not. Therefore, our conclusion is that it should be denied. Based on, your reading of the facts, you may come to a different finding and therefore a different conclusion about the approval. And say, you might find that, for example, the proposed material is a compatible substitute for wood and therefore meets B2. But you'd have to give a fact as to why. It has to have a rational fact pattern for your conclusion. Does that follow?
Yeah, because, well, I would say we couldn't do that because we have a policy that says the opposite. And there is no unsafe condition or health hazard with this porch flooring. Maybe the asbestos siding, but not the porch flooring. And yeah, this is so hard.
I would say, too, even absent the policy, the previous denial for Mr. Presser, there was also a master plan site. This issue had come up before. The policy was meant to give flexibility and guidance where warranted, but the HPC has been consistent for this type of resource, even absent the policy, that wood is the only appropriate material. This policy just puts an exclamation point on that, I think, for purposes of clarity, but then gives alternative solutions for different types of resources in other locations at those properties. For example, even the one that was recommended for denial at Fawcett Street, you had approved it for the side porch at that property. So you didn't deny it all the way around there, but in a specific location, you could find that you had approved it, but not on the front porch.
And we recently had the property up county where well, we get them all the time, where an old house that hasn't been monitored and work was done that would not meet the criteria. And it's been 20, 30, 40 years back. And that we don't punish the newest owner because they're not the ones who did the work.
In that case, yes, the HPC found that would be, a hardship on that owner, that was not something that they had done themselves. So, but for portions of the work that they did do, if I'm thinking of the right one in Boyd's, they actually, we need to bring the photos to show you. They had put on hardy plank siding. You made them take the hardy plank off and put wood on. They did it. It looks great. They undid all of the work that you directed them to do to come into compliance. But for the work that they did not do, you allowed that to remain. But that was a lot of that was on the rear.
Yeah,
as well.
That's the other thing.
Contributing resource in the Boyd's district.
Commissioner Pelletier has a question.
I have a question. Why is this an outstanding resource with the asbestos shingles?
That's really pretty typical for Garrett Park and also for Linden with these types of the early railroad suburbs. There were some alterations that were made. The emphasis was on the Queen Anne,
The form.
the form of it,
details.
and the elements of the architecture that contribute to that form. So the irregular massing, but really the front porch is really part and parcel
Right.
of that form,
Okay.
and that the siding aside was a really excellent example within the district.
Okay.
So
I buy that.
remind me again, Garrett Park Garrett Park's a historic district, but they don't have their own guidelines like Greenwich Village or Tacoma?
They do have guidelines within the Bethesda Garrett Park master plan that was cited earlier that was adopted in 1992. And those guidelines are not as fulsome as Tacoma Park or Kensington, but they do have specific guidance for outstanding resources. We can go back to this slide real quick. They're pretty short, but there was guidance given. So outstanding resources are defined, I'm reading from the guidelines, a resource which is of outstanding significance due to its architectural and/or historical features. An outstanding resource may date from any historical period and may be representative of any architectural style. However, it must have special features, architectural details, and/or historical associations that make the resource especially representative of the style and importance to the district. So for 10923 Montrose, yeah, it just lists it as an outstanding resource, of which there are, well, they don't have the raw number within the district, but it does, the design guidelines do break out some percentages for Garrett Park, but it's not really relevant. It lists it as an outstanding resource, and many others of that same vintage are also outstanding resources within the district. So it's really just a paragraph that talks about it and doesn't give much guidance besides that. So then we really do look back to the Secretary of the Interior standards as well to help guide our decision-making.
Thank you. As you can see, we're struggling with this one. We get a lot of cases through a lot of different ways. I think one of the first, when I got on this commission in 2019, one of the first cases was a house where it was undergoing renovation and the contractor ripped off all of the historic wood siding, put it in a dumpster, and the owner didn't realize it until the dumpster was gone. And he had to, and they put on the siding, or they were going to, or we found out about it, I don't recall now, but we made them put on wood siding. And then all over the board, we've dealt with this issue. I have a question for you. I'm going to preface it by saying what we're going to have to do today, what I'm going to do today, depending on your answer to my question, is we are going to do a roll call vote on this hop. And people are going to vote up or down. And it's going to be completely dependent on the commissioners, one way or the other. And right now, we would need a motion, and the motion would be to go along with the staff's recommendations, if that's the motion. But before we do that, I want to ask you, if we deferred this by a month or 2 months, would you go out and do the research to find the pricing on a material, to see if it's something that you could find a wood material that's going to last and is affordable for you, that you would be willing to replace your 13-year-old porch floor with?
Well, we'd need more than a couple of months because we're about to go away for a month. So that's it, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, you need, Ms. Ballo, I would appreciate your input on this.
I mean, we could certainly provide the applicant with, information for some of the thermally treated lumber. If the goal of the commission is just to give the applicants more information before you make a decision, I mean, we're perfectly capable and able to give them that information. That's fine. We can certainly do that.
And if we gave them 2 months, that's not an excessive amount of time.
It's totally up to your discretion. We're advertising this week. Well, next week we have to advertise for the July 23rd meeting, so that's a little tight. We've already advertised for July 9th. She says they're out of town. We have our virtual meeting August 13th. We're back here, and so we do have a meeting August the 13th, and then we're back here in person September 3rd. So if the goal is to just get them, more comfortable with where you think the commission is headed with something, we can certainly help facilitate that. Or if you'd like to make a decision tonight, and then we can give them that information afterwards, we're happy to do what the commission directs.
Commissioner Doman, before you speak, I just want you to understand you can't talk to this applicant outside of this hearing. Okay? In case you were thinking about doing that.
Well, maybe I was. So, I don't want to start this whole thing. Doing the pricing is not easy, okay? Back in 2023, when we started this whole thing about synthetic wood, I went to many different lumber yards, many different projects. I contacted many different suppliers on the thing. You can never get a good price to compare. Some are linear feet, some are board feet, some are square feet, some are, it's almost impossible. I worked up a sheet that I provided staff on pricing, breaking it down as best as I could, dollars per square foot, okay? It's hard because some of the stuff is milled, some of it isn't, some is tongue and groove, some of it isn't. I think it's actually asking you to do this is an impossibility, okay? You can't do this. I also, in preparation for tonight's meeting, I put together a spreadsheet of 3 products, white or yellow pine, mahogany, and a product called Acre. And I looked at cost per square foot, installation cost, maintenance costs, tax credits factored in, and I have that available. If you, I'd love to share it with the applicant or share it with staff.
I think you would need to share it with staff who can share it with the applicant.
Pardon?
You need to share it with staff who can share it with the applicant.
Because I have done pretty much what you're asking the applicant to do, and it's not easy. It's not an easy thing that you can come up with an answer that why it, and it ends up being that if we don't worry about cost to do something, then rip the whole thing out and put mahogany in. I mean, if cost is of no issue and it has to be wood, then we rip the whole thing out. I mean, I think cost does play into this, even though it's not supposed to, I guess.
Cost is not a factor.
I understand.
But
if I was an applicant, it would be.
Commissioner Doman, the point to this exercise is allowing the applicant to consider if replacement is something that is feasible for them. And that is purely their decision to make, but it's giving them an understanding of what is out there and allowing them time to research those products. It is not for us to make the recommendation of which one they would pick or if they even want to. It's just allowing them some time to think this through, because when we make our vote tonight, we set this thing, we turn this thing going down the hill.
It seems to me that we have a ton of information that we could provide. Instead of asking the applicant to go out and do this work, we have a ton of information that we could provide and help.
And the staff can provide that to them.
Yes, we certainly could, and we were happy to at any phase of it. All I'd offer again, I appreciate it's a difficult decision for the commissioners. Aside from the technical reading of the case, again, that it's an outstanding resource, doesn't meet the standards or the guidelines for approval, and that's why the staff is recommending the denial. There's no fact pattern that would be presented back to the staff that would change that conclusion, nor do I think there's any additional facts that could be brought to bear that would change the commissioner's recommendation. I really do appreciate, though, what you're trying to do with this. I might recommend it might be easier to go ahead and make a decision, and then the applicant will have certainty to go down a path, and we can provide them with all of the information necessary to help them implement whatever it is that the commission decides to do.
Kind of a rip the Band-Aid off thing. Yeah. Commissioner Pelletier.
Hypothetically, if I was to make a motion to approve this retroactive hop because the resource already has a material compromise with the asbestos shingles.
Can you pull up?
Would that be kosher, or is that not, we're not even going there?
So you would need to find that it meets one of these.
Okay.
That the existence of the asbestos shingle siding on an outstanding resource somehow then justifies a non-compatible, that the substitute material is then somehow rendered compatible because of the existence of asbestos shingle siding, which is a fact pattern that, I mean, staff doesn't agree. I understand where you're going with it.
Right.
Staff doesn't agree with that. We have asbestos shingle siding, frankly, on many of these houses that have not been restored. But that does not then give leeway to add additional plastic materials to an outstanding resource. You know, the staff would agree with Commissioner Haynes about the death by 1,000 cuts with this. And, you know, comparable to, I sort of use the analogy about restoring a classic car. You know, if you have to replace the part, like, you don't want to put like the bumper for a Chevette on the front of a really nice Porsche, for example. Like you maintain the integrity of materials and design, and the existence of the asbestos shingle siding doesn't weigh on the appropriateness of the porch flooring.
Well,
That would be the staff's position on it, but you'd have to make a finding.
Okay. Because if the porch was all redone in fiberglass, would you, and then,
Then it's not it's a copy.
no, it's not if the innards were the same. My point is just, I guess this is I know we're not going by feelings here.
Right.
Like, there are laws in place, but my feeling is that the addition of this material, when the entire house is covered with asbestos shingles, I feel like we're sort of missing the point, but I understand where we're coming from here, but I get it.
The approved and adopted master plan designated this as an outstanding resource, even with the existence of the asbestos
I know.
shingles, as it did for other ones in the district as well. So I would argue against that as a permission structure for additional leeway for incompatible materials.
Okay. Figured I'd give it a try.
Commissioner Doman?
Yeah, a question for staff. These homes are designated like outstanding, significant resource, or non-compatible, or whatever. When did these designations come about? Who made the designations, and have they ever been changed? I mean, if this is outstanding, kind of playing on what Julie had to say, can this whole thing, the status of this house be changed from outstanding to just contributing or something?
So the designation was made by you to start.
But that was a long time ago, wasn't it?
Well, yes, but I'm giving you the history of this since you asked. The Historic Preservation Commission made the recommendation about the categorization of the resources. It was affirmed by the Planning Board. It was approved and adopted by the County Council. So, yes, theoretically, if we were to revisit the Garrett Park Master Plan, we being the County Council is the only body that can change it. You know, we've had cases before where we had, for example, a property that was classified as non-contributing in the Chevy Chase Village Historic District that we all agreed was an error in the master plan that was still approved to be demolished because the council established it as non-contributing, and that was the rule, that has the force of the rule of law. So that was how we had to proceed in this case. There's been no error here established that this should not be an outstanding resource. But to your question, this body cannot change the categorization of a resource on its own. It has to come from the county council.
I would like to remind the commission that we have had to remove properties recently from the locational atlas because they have lost their integrity. And that is a very serious issue. In this county, we are losing our historic resources drop by drop by drop, whether it be by fire this last week or because of negligence of decades of no repair or anything done for properties way up county, or just a contractor doing what he wants to do and he never gets stopped, and he degrades the property to a point where it's no longer historic. So we have our regulations to comply with. We are the commission, the Historic Preservation Commission. We must, as much as it's difficult at times, we must comply with these regulations we have, and we spent a lot of time on our porch flooring policy. So we've been through this, and I say now we make a motion and do a roll call vote to determine where this is going to land today.
Hearing no other commentary, I will make Commissioner Haynes, I will make a motion that the Historic Preservation Commission deny HOP number 111980 retroactive at 10923 Montrose Avenue, Garrett Park, based on the staff conditions, in particularly that PVC decking is not an appropriate substitute for wood based on 24A8B2 and the Secretary of Standards for Rehabilitation number 6. I would suggest that the applicant remedy the porch floor within 6 to 8 months, and that the staff provide wood product options for the applicant to consider.
Is there a second for this motion?
This is Commissioner Pelletier, I'll second.
We will do a roll call vote. And again, a yay means that you agree with the motion that we deny the retroactive HOP. And a nay means that you disagree with that. So Commissioner Dominiani.
This is Commissioner Dominiani, yay.
Commissioner Haynes, yay.
Chair Burdett, yay.
Commissioner Pelletier, yay.
Commissioner Galway, nay.
Commissioner Doman, nay.
Motion passes 4-2.
So this is Chair Burdett, and I know this is difficult, exceedingly difficult for you. And if there was any way we could have worked around the regulations, we would have. But please talk with staff. They will give you a list of new products that are out there. If you'd like to set and stay, we're going to be discussing our porch flooring policy right now. It may get a little tedious, but you'll get an understanding of the policy itself, and then staff can provide you with a copy of the policy along with a list of products that can be used to replace your porch flooring. Your HOP for your windows has been approved, so that can go ahead, okay? And how much time do we?
I was recommending, Commissioner Haynes, I was recommending 6 to 8 months.
6 to 8 months, okay? And you can discuss this with staff. Okay, going forward, we have the draft illustrated design guidelines for HPC Policy 24-01, replacement porch flooring and decking. Can the staff provide their report?
This is Devin Murtha for the record. There's no report. We're just going through the draft illustrated design guidelines for feedback on this first iteration. As a reminder, we are not reopening the policy. We are discussing if the illustrations in this design guideline are effective in communicating the policy. So going through if any of the photos are effective, if anything is missing, if anything needs to be altered for a second draft, or if the commission requires additional time to review the illustrated design guidelines, we can also meet back at a later date for that.
Excuse me, I didn't get a copy.
1 second.
If you don't have one available, that's fine. I can go off the screen. It's in the book.
It's just down front.
Thank you.
But we're happy to hear feedback at any time on any of the pages in no particular order.
This is Commissioner Pelletier. I don't think we could have approved the last HOP because we're using the picture of that case in the what not to do section of this regulation. So
It was really a great example, unfortunately. Um,
Is this a draft or is this done?
This is the draft. It hasn't been reviewed by the communications department yet, so
Oh,
some
okay.
things like
You didn't
fonts.
watermark it.
Yeah. Oh,
The other ones are watermarked in the draft.
This is Commissioner Damiani. It's just open mic night, is that, at this point, is that right? Yeah, well, I'd like to start by complimenting you all because I think this is excellent, and I think the graphic design elements are great. I think that for me, the most important page is page 13, with all of the different images of sort of what is recommended and what is not. In fact, my only recommendation would be to expand the number of examples that would be recommended or not, because I think that there are different products and colors, and sometimes lighting on some of the wood grain and stuff can affect like applicants' perceptions of whether something actually would be compatible or not. So my only recommendation would be to make this part a two-pager maybe, with a few other examples. But other than that, I think it's great. And I think it'll be excellent to have a PDF, sort of on the website for people to draw from. So yeah, my compliments, truly. The last thing would just be, with the communications folks doing some of the, font, like spacing and stuff like that, figuring that out, making it all consistent. But yeah, my compliments.
This is Commissioner Pelletier. It's interesting looking at this with all the wood flooring. That's why we're having it. It looks so much better than, the timber tech with the embossed wood grain is just I appreciate all the photos because it really kind of hits home what we're talking about here. So thank you. I think this is an excellent document.
On page 6, you have types of porch wood flooring. And in the bottom, it says, while not an exhaustive list of wood species, these are the most frequently used. I'm not sure if that's true for tongue and groove decking. Yellow pine, okay. Douglas fir, I would not recommend. It's too soft. Mahogany is too expensive. And Ipe is not even recommended for tongue and groove. So,
What would you recommend?
getting rid of Ipe.
Well, if we were to give examples to the public of wood species that should be used, what would you recommend?
I contacted, I have too many pieces of paper in front of me right now, but anyway, it's in New Jersey. There's a Historic Preservation Commission in New Jersey. I contacted them, and as soon as I find it, I'll be more than glad to too. But they did something similar, but they have a list of maybe 8 different species of wood that they recommend, and then it also has like a little, kind of like in one of the technical advisory documents we have, where it says expensive, too soft, subject to rotting, So they have a little table, and I will find it sometime.
This is Chair Burdett. I would agree with the Ipe that is no longer
Here.
recommended simply because it is now endangered
Yeah.
by over-harvesting.
Well, Ipe and mahogany, too.
Yeah, mahogany too. What about sapele?
It's even worse.
Wait, yeah.
Sapele is what they put on Winterbourne,
Exactly.
Yeah.
and it looks great. So whatever, we just need additional, if we're going to strike things, we'd like to give people as many options as possible.
Well, it's called the Borough of Glen Ridge, HPC. They have a really great document on what HPC, historic document and what it's all about, what is historic preservation, I think. And I know we have something, but theirs is good. Ours is good too.
We're always glad to see what our colleagues are doing. I know people are doing, better things than we are too.
But
Thank you.
This is from their brochure, and they list them, a bunch of them. And again, some of them popular, I'd never recommend. Cypress, I'd never
Redwood.
recommend.
Would you recommend redwood?
No, it's too soft.
Well, so we have to give them options. Thank you. Thank you for this.
How about ash?
Good
What
for
about
baseball, man.
thermally modified ash?
I've never seen it.
What's the
Thermary.
Thermary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a sample of it with me right here, but I've contacted them, and they could not give me a reference within driving distance, other than Georgia or something, of where it's ever been used. I have no information about application, how long it lasts, other than the fact it's a vendor. Yes, it's good, and it lasts forever.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Doman that we don't want to recommend woods that are known to fail, like yellow pine or any pine, and Douglas fir is part of that. I think we ought to look at the thermally modified woods, or at least speak about that.
Yeah. It's just that we don't give
Well, we don't
names.
list it. If we're gonna use most frequently used, let's successfully used,
But,
maybe.
Change the
but,
language, yeah.
but I cannot walk up to anywhere in Montgomery County and find it. It doesn't exist here.
Well, I suspect that people have been repeating their mistakes using yellow pine because that's easily available, and they keep rotting out. So people have to use a better wood, yes, more expensive, and that's what I think we want to promote.
What about oak?
No, oak's not
No.
not good out.
Cypress? Cypress used to
Well,
be good, but apparently it's not as good as it used to be.
As I probably have mentioned before, I did a whole deck in Gaithersburg, I guess, and it lasted 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was thoroughly, all 6 edges were primed and dried and installed with stainless steel screws. Cypress. It didn't hold, it was very soft.
There is some of the thermally modified, oops, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm not that good at interrupting, but on page 7, on the next page, we talk about pressure and heat-treated wood. Are there specific things you would like included in that section that could be helpful? Examples of which woods are better modified?
Then we get into product
Then we get into
names,
products, but
which we were
it
trying
is-
not to do.
I think it might be better to find some examples around where it has been used. Now, not all of them are going to be decks or flooring. Some may be veneer or be on the sides of building. That's where I'm seeing them used, is used on schools, buildings that they do not want. They want this stuff to last. So they are putting it in instead of, but they still want the wood look. So I think we could probably find a few examples like that. I can talk to my client to see where they've seen it, or because they also are using it, but they've also looked other places. We might also contact the Green Building Institute for their recommendations, or if they have references of where it's been used. But it is new, somewhat new to this area, and certainly new to the individual homeowner. So I think that's it. There's a lot of information out in the market for architects and contractors, but it's going to be, I think we're going to have to find a way to work around this without necessarily giving a product name, unless we do want to give 3 product names and say, these are the ones we've heard about.
We currently, and this is something I had wanted to ask, is that crediting photos that we didn't take, some of them are from the manufacturer websites with permission. So this photo is from Thermary, and so we are not recommending Thermary, but we are saying that this is an appropriate wood that you're seeing, and this photo is by Thermary. So if we want to remove that because that's too close to endorsement, or how you want to navigate products.
Frankly, I'd call up Thermary and say, we want to use your picture. Now, where was this installed? We want to know where this was installed. And if it's anywhere on the East Coast, or in the anywhere like all the way to Colorado, it would probably be a good, example. for us.
Well, like contractors order products all the time that aren't made locally. It's not.
Yes, definitely. Chair Burdett, if your client has any contacts, and we'll also get in touch with the folks from Fallen Lumber in Halethorpe. They make the thermally modified ash and other resources, other modified wood types, so we can ask them for potentially a client list or other places here in the DMV. And Halethorpe's not close, but it's not Colorado, so it's doable. Do the commissioners have? For Commissioner Doman, can we keep the list that you gave us? Is that okay? Thank you. So to the portion on the bottom left, so if we strike wood, pine, Douglas fir, mahogany, we still do want to recommend some wood species to people to give them a real wood option if they don't want to go for a product. But would the commissioners want us to do what Commissioner Doman has suggested, that we give a wider range of wood species with the caveats and drawbacks of each, and then people can kind of weigh on their own what's important to them?
We left with the former applicant that was out here to do the research. I mean, this is not easy.
It is not.
And asking her to come back with a recommended wood species that she can use when she rips out all of her PVC decking, she can't do that.
Yep, no, Commissioner Doman, but I appreciate it's very hard to do, especially if you're not in the trades. But that's no different than a guy marketing rubber or plastic shingles and saying this is going to be better than anything else. I mean, they get information that is inappropriate themselves. We're just asking them to channel their research in a path that is appropriate and approvable. And it's not easy, but it's not impossible.
And I mean, we're open to changing that section completely if that's what the commission recommends. But one of the things that we looked back in developing the policy was the National Park Service's original preservation brief on the preservation of wood porches. And the species that they identified are redwood, cedar, cypress, Doug fir, southern yellow pine, eastern white pine, poplar, and American mahogany. So, again, now that they try and make these and crafting the preservation briefs so they're not dated, but those species
No good.
yeah.
No
So
good.
so again, and that was updated most recently in I think 2003, no, October 2006. So it's been nearly 20 years since that was updated, and it is again this information is changing all the time, and what's available both as a manufactured product but also as a natural product. What's available and what's good has changed dramatically. So, some input would be helpful. Again, our objective was just to provide a little bit of direction or a little bit of guidance to applicants who come to us sort of throwing up their hands and say, well, you won't let me do this, you won't let me do this, well, what can I do? So this was the what you could do that's helpful. While we fully recognize that something like southern yellow pine, I mean, it's almost a meme at this point where they have the tight grain one and then the ones where the grains are, you can measure them with a yardstick. We're just, we want to provide some level of guidance with something that isn't absolutely going to fall apart immediately.
But isn't this discussion making more and more of an argument that wood is almost impossible to put on your deck?
Well, I mean, again,
it's
we're
not
guided
gonna-
by the standards in 24A, which talk about material compatibility, and that's where all of this stems from, is finding, the most compatible materials. And again, in ranking the categories of resources within the county, we've determined that, the ones that are the most significant need to adhere to the most rigorous level of review, and we're easier on those contributing and non-contributing.
Oh, I get that. I think just in this discussion tonight, we're seeing more and more how difficult this wood this wood requirement is getting to be. Like, even with the list from 2006, a lot of those woods, they're not going to last, and we know it now. And it's just becoming, not that, I'm not saying that we flip, but I think it's becoming exceedingly difficult to keep this requirement, to get people to be able to meet this requirement.
I would have to disagree respectfully because people have different priorities. I mean, I certainly do for my own house. You guys do for your houses as well. And people who buy into these historic districts, it comes with a certain set of expectations that they are abiding by. They are informed of their historic properties when they buy them. And we're not saying wood won't work. Wood is expensive. We offer tax credits for it, you know, and it's what people want to balance. So it's not that there aren't good woods out there that people can use that will last. They're expensive. Maybe some of them aren't, you know, environmentally sourced or sustainable now. But to be frank, that's not an issue for the Historic Preservation Commission at all. So I think there are plenty of options for people.
What are those wood options? What are they?
Well,
The thermally modified.
well, there's thermally modified. I mean, for me, again, I would, you know, if it were my own house, I might do something like mahogany, or I might do something like a cedar, and just expect nothing is going to last forever. I have
Cedar, that's a good one.
cedar.
Add that one to
I
the
have
list.
I have redwood. My house was built in the late '60s out of redwood.
I did too,
and
yeah.
it's fantastic.
But it's soft.
And I gotta paint it. I have to stain it all the time. And I bought into this HOA that had a particular architect-designed house for this look, and that's what I wanted. But also 15 years ago, we had to do all this work on it. This is just anecdotal. We had to do all this work, new windows had to go in, and all of the trim was pine. And it's lasted. It's lasted. We have kept it painted, we have kept it caulked, we have kept up with everything, even on like the sides of the house that get absolutely baked by the sun all the time. And it's lasted. People just have to put in the work and the maintenance. That's my more personal opinion about this, is that people have options. Yeah. This is not an impossibility. It's just expensive.
And
Yeah, that's true.
And you have to maintain your house.
Yeah.
do we know the case tonight? Do we know if that's the first time that porch floor has been replaced in its history?
I do not know. I would venture no. I'm
No,
sure.
but not within the last, you know.
I think with that owner, I mean, not in the history of the house,
No,
but
but
it
in the
sounds
history
like,
of that owner,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, with my work, was checking into some thermally modified manufacturers for something else recently. And the one that struck me was there's this product out of, I think it was Finland. And they, you know, it's Finland, so it was supposed to meet their marine climate, which is tough to start with. But they have used it, clients in Saudi Arabia have used it too. And that's kind of like two extremes. I was just completely blown away by that one. Now, I haven't priced it, and I don't know how easy it is to get. It is marketed here in the States. But the thermally modified woods they last longer than the yellow pine, you know, and probably comparable to Ipe and a lot easier to use. So, were you going to?
If I could add a recommendation, just drawing this out, I think that it would be good if we're going to include a table like what Commissioner Doman was talking about, that it would actually be good to continue to include yellow pine, as well as probably Doug fir and maybe a couple of the other cedars and others, because people are going to be looking around at pricing and understanding maybe like the drawbacks when presented side by side against some of these other products or some of the other fancier woods might be useful for them. So I wouldn't recommend against sort of striking yellow pine altogether. We would let the sort of property owners themselves determine if that was going to be a good choice for them, understanding that although it's expensive, it's probably not going to last compared to the others. Like those trade-offs, I think, might be important to be presented there for somebody.
I totally agree, yeah, and the heading is types of porch wood flooring, it doesn't say types of appropriate, I mean, and so reality is these are woods that are used, and I wouldn't recommend one or the other. I would just be very clear to say a yellow pine or a Doug fir floor will not last, and there may be some owner out there that says, that's okay, I'll replace my floor every 5 years. I doubt it, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, maybe that's okay, but we just let them know that that's not a product that's going to last. And we don't necessarily have to recommend for or against it. We can just state that fact.
These are your options.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask the question about preservatives. Commissioner Doman, do you have experience with applying wood preservatives to raw wood before installation? And how is the performance? I mean, would a yellow pine, if it were coated with a wood preservative, perform better?
If you're going to get a yellow pine, why don't you buy a pressure treated? You know, I mean,
Well, I
that
mean-
is already saturated with a preservative in it.
Does it come
Yeah,
in
you-
clear? You
you-
can get a clear?
You can get it,
clear?
and I have a sample here of a tongue and groove, pressure-treated yellow pine. Yeah, and that's probably, it's not even listed on here, but I think if
Because
I
we're-
had to do something, I would look into a pressure-treated yellow pine tongue and groove material.
Agreed. I would certainly, priming is not going to cut it. You have to treat it with a preservative or a pressure treated and then painted. And I think that's probably doesn't happen at all, particularly with the use of pine, and that's why it rots out in 5 years. But I think the installation is also kind of key to longevity. How do you treat the tongue and groove? Isn't that where moisture is getting trapped and starts to cause?
Well, again, in my review of the New Jersey, I can't remember the name of it, the borough, the New Jersey.
Of Glen Ridge.
Glen Ridge, okay. And they're kind of big on pressure treated. And they said, it has to be painted. Now, it didn't go into all four sides being primed or anything, but you got to keep the surface of it every other year painted. Like you're talking about, like it's maintenance on the thing. If you use a good pressure treated, and they also, as I mentioned before, they have, it's called kiln dried after pressure treatment. So because if you go to Home Depot, the wood is all twisted all over the place, So you pressure treated, then you kiln dried, you come up with some straight wood, and that's a viable product, if you ask me, that we could
Yeah,
use here.
that's the KDAT, kiln dried after treating.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a particular brand out there
Yeah.
that I was looking into. The other thing is that I agree with Commissioner Haynes, it's the installation of these porch flooring or boards what are they resting on? Have they put them on a piece of plywood, which is bad? What is going on underneath the porch? Because we've gone through that as well. So I think that needs to be part of this. It's like, if your porch floor is 6 inches off the ground, then you need to be putting down some sheathing underneath there.
Oh, absolutely.
And you need to let these boards need to be able to shed water.
Well, and the underside needs to be able to breathe. So if you're planting heavy shrubbery around and you can't get any airflow underneath it to dry, then that's also part of the problem. But I really think treating the tongue and the groove is a large part of the rotting problem. Because the water gets in there, it doesn't have really any way to get out because you've painted the top surfaces. So I think you have to be aggressive and you have to seal the tongue and the groove.
I've never run across anybody doing that. I
Well,
mean,
nobody does it, but
but
I'm
it
saying
makes,
if
I
you
mean, it
want.
makes sense. Okay, I won't argue with it. It doesn't make sense.
And they
But
don't
you-
do it and it rots in 5 years. So I'm saying because wood isn't what it is, or certain species anyways, the installation has to be stepped up to because water on the surface will dry, it'll run off, right, but it's where it gets trapped is where it's going to rot. So you can seal those conditions, then in theory.
Well, that's where a lot of these, like the EPA, if you read the spec on that thing, it has to have a gap in there.
Right,
You
it has to
can't
breathe.
You can't use EPA in a tongue and groove. The water will stay in there, kind of thing. And I'm not sure about mahogany. I've never seen mahogany tongue and groove.
I think we need to build our own porch flooring test laboratory. We're going to use different woods. We're going to do different sealant.
Your yard?
My yard, we work great out front and.
All right, and I will build one out of synthetic products, and we'll see who lasts the longest.
But, well, that's not the point. the point is, can we get, I think 9 out of 10 homeowners would prefer wood if they could make it last 10 to 15 years.
My other comment is.
You know, I've had clients slip and fall on a wet PVC decking and break his elbow.
That's a different story.
Well, you're suggesting hazardous material conditions now?
Well, and there are some of the PVC, depending on the color, if they're not covered, you can burn your feet on them, or hands if you, and they get moldy. So they are not an ideal situation, not to mention the fact that none of them are recyclable at this point. 0.
Yeah, think about the waste that's coming off this
Yeah,
PVC
well, getting
deck
your wood
boards.
from Finland isn't exactly.
And all the dust, the PVC dust that's cut, it blows into the environment. I have carpenters that will
Microplastics.
not work with PVC trim because the
really?
dust is so toxic. They won't work with it.
Also electrostatic sticks to you.
There you go.
All right, folks,
Wait.
can we move on?
Wait. That information that I got for you from New Jersey, okay? I was watching This Old House, which is one of my favorite programs. I'm serious This Old House fan for 30, 40 years, I think maybe. It's been on. So they're doing a significant house, okay? And the discussion was, what do we use for decking? And they went back to the Historic Preservation Commission that was in charge of the house, and they got permission to use acre, the rice product, byproduct kind of thing. And even though, laws are made from, each district can make different laws, I understand that, and our laws are made for Montgomery County. But just because it's here, it could be the same, if we're arguing this case in a different jurisdiction, it might be perfectly fine to use a synthetic product for a deck. We're operating out of Montgomery County. It doesn't make it, it's not like a universal truth to this, because it can vary. It depends upon how the HPC interprets it. So the one in there, they made, I don't know if it was an exception or whatever, but it was significant that they deviated from the requirement for wood, and they allowed them to use acre for their floor decking. And I think we've done maybe something similar here.
We haven't, but we haven't for acre. But, to your point, land use regulations vary across all jurisdictions. What's allowed, by zoning in one county is different in the county next door. What's allowed in one residential zone in this county is different in the other one next door. Historic district regulations are very similar.
Yeah.
So that's not surprising to hear. So we can take all of the comments. If there are other, if you guys want to continue the discussion, we're here for it. We're also, if you want to send us additional comments over email, we can take all of these back. It's up to the chair if you guys are done with this item now, or you want to keep going.
Well, no, I say we close out the draft illustration guidelines the consensus is you've done a wonderful job with it to this point, but the comments that we have made, we would like to see them added or addressed in this, but it's very attractive, and it's going to be very easy for the general public to understand and read. And with that, I would like to move on to item 3, which is the technical correction to HPC policy 24-01.
Yeah, so simply put, this is, the words do not make all the difference. So there was an omission in the language for the guideline for non-contributing and secondary resources. The text in their, the approved text says, these resources, it says new porch flooring / decking for these resources need to satisfy the criteria for compatible substitute material as defined in this policy. The language of that requirement actually makes them a higher level than contributing resources, which is not the aim of the policy. So you've been provided with corrected language for the policy with the words "do not" underlined in paragraph number 5 of the policy, which would correct that. And there have been a couple of staff reports that have come forward that have acknowledged that that is an error and that we would be bringing forth this technical correction. And we decided to bring it forward with the discussion of the design guidelines in the best use of everybody's time. So staff recommends that the HPC make a motion to formally vote to amend the language, and then we will distribute the corrected language to the public.
Commissioner Haynes, are you going to very quickly?
Sure. I make a motion that the Historic Preservation Commission adopt the changes to the HPC policy 24-01 as stated in the policy.
This is Chair Burdett. I second the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays or abstentions? This motion passes. You are free to make the correction. Moving on to item number 4, the minutes of June 11th, 2025. Did anybody read them?
This is Commissioner Damiani. I read them.
Thank you, Commissioner Damiani. Would you like to make a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve the minutes as shown for the June 11th, 2025 meeting.
I second the motion because I read them as well. All in favor, say aye.
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 No nays, no abstentions. The minutes pass. Any staff items?
We have 2 staff items, really briefly. Actually, I could say 3, and it'll still be brief, I promise. So for the first one, please leave us your iPads. If you wish to tonight, clear out your information, log out of your iCloud account, and we will take those, and then we will coordinate getting them back to you in a timely manner. If you want to hold on to yours for now, that's fine, totally fine, and we'll just coordinate a different time for the drop-off during the month of July. The locational atlas case that you all heard at your last hearing on June 11th is scheduled to be heard by the Planning Board on July the 10th. I do have a time for that, Commissioner Burdett. If you need, any, I can send you the link for that for the sign up. I think we already actually included you, frankly, as a speaker, but having you sign up will also be good for their records. And then the last announcement is that after July 1st, the Historic Preservation section is becoming a division. So they have reorganized the planning department, and they have changed the geographic area teams, and they have changed the functional planning divisions. Right now, Historic Preservation is part of the Countywide Planning and Policy Division. We used to be the Functional Planning and Policy Division. For the last 45 years, or since its inception, more or less, the Historic Preservation Office has been embedded within other divisions. Starting July 1st, we will be our own division, and we will be able to better advocate for expanding our programming, and this was at the behest of our planning director, Jason Sartori. This change was approved by the planning board and affirmed by the council with our budget that was approved back in April or May. So there'll be a little bit of a change in that I'll move from being the supervisor to the acting division chief for this new division, and then hopefully that the goal is to expand hiring in the division. We're going to be advocating for that, for more staff for the regulatory work, for the master planning work, for the special projects. We're also going to have, transportation planning is being pulled out. We're going to have a transportation planning division, which we had 20 years ago. We're going back to one. We're going to have an environmental planning division, which we used to have 20 years ago. Then we didn't. Now we will again. We're also having a design, placemaking, and policy division. So couple of changes, but for our purposes, that's the big one. We're really excited about that, and we'll keep giving you updates as we progress.
And this is Chair Burdett. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Big news.
Congratulations to all of us. It's really good for the program and really great for the HPC and our visibility within the department. I'm really excited.
And there are no commission items, so with that, we are adjourned.